They call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle, and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon, it's 1 minute past 3. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. Russia has resumed its attack on the last Ukrainian defenders holed up in a giant steel plant in Mariupol, hitting it with airstrikes and trying to storm it. Footage from the Ukrainian nationalist Azov battalion appears to show women and children holding out in the underground bunkers of the Azovstal plant. Ukrainian authorities say more than 1,000 civilians are there with the troops. Evacuations were expected to start at midday from the city, but an aide to Mariupol's mayor says the evacuation did not take place. Alice Jefferson from disaster relief charity Shelterbox says humanitarian corridors are vitally important.
We understand now is that people are continually trapped in some of the sort of hardest, most violent areas, and there's few and far between options for them to either receive vital support or indeed sort of escape and get out through safe means. Humanitarian corridors in conflict are vitally important, and I think for us what we really want to see is predictable, assured, safe passage for civilians.
A Conservative MP is asking for a police probe into the footage that appears to show Sir Keir Starmer drinking beer with colleagues in April last year, when indoor mixing was banned. The Labour leader was cleared of breaching lockdown rules by Durham Constabulary in February, but Richard Holden believes the move should be renewed in the wake of Boris Johnson's fixed penalty notice. A 33-year-old man has been arrested after a man was stabbed and 10 others were injured in an attack in Coventry. Warwickshire police say the suspect remains in custody following the incident in Bedworth this morning. A man in his 20s is in stable condition in hospital. Detectives are appealing for anyone else who was injured to come forward. UK supermarkets have placed limits on how much cooking oil people can buy due to supply chain problems caused by the war in Ukraine. Tesco is limiting each customer to a maximum of 3 bottles of cooking oils, and Iceland is rationing sunflower oil sales to 1 bottle per person. Most of the UK's sunflower oil comes from Ukraine. The British Retail Consortium said the move was a temporary measure. The price of oils and fats is almost a quarter more expensive than a year ago. Polls are predicting incumbent President Emmanuel Macron could reach over half of votes in France's election tomorrow. President Macron has admitted it feels like a failure for him that his rival Marine Le Pen is set to reach a higher turnout than in 2017. French journalist Laura Haim told GB News many voters are disillusioned by both political parties in the country and that Le Pen is popular.
The far right and the Le Pen party is really high at this moment, close to 50%. So no matter what, there's a real division in the French society like never before.
Japan's Coast Guard is searching for a tour boat that went missing with 26 people, including 2 children on board. The boat reported it was sinking off the northern island of Hokkaido and has not been seen since. Japanese media reports Coast Guards have dispatched 5 patrol boats and 2 aircraft in the search. On TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. We'll have more news in an hour. Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking fine and clear in the north, with showers in the southwest clearing away. Let's take a look at the details. Showers will have cleared much of the southwest by 7 p.m, but still a few lingering around coastal parts of Cornwall. Further showery rain is expected later in the night. In London, it will be largely cloudy to end the day, but it should stay largely dry. South coastal parts will see some showers overnight. Any lingering showers across South Wales will clear away this evening, so it's going to be a dry night but blustery at times. It's a similar picture across the West Midlands. It'll be cloudy through the evening, but skies will clear overnight. Temperatures will drop a little, but it will stay a frost-free night. The winds are going to continue to feed in from the North Sea overnight, and it'll remain quite cool around coastal parts of the northeast with some clear spells. The far northeast of Scotland will remain cloudy and murky this evening. Elsewhere, there'll be largely clear skies, leading to a touch of frost in the most prone spots overnight. There will also be largely clear skies for Northern Ireland as we end the day and go through the night. The odd pocket of mist and fog is possible. Whilst it will be a fine night, increasingly clear for many, we will notice the odd showery rain in the far south, and that is how the weather is shaping up overnight and into tomorrow morning.
The GB News Tavern is open on this bank holiday Monday, and I'm joined by Lizzie Cundy, TV personality and the first football wag.
Wow, that makes me sound old.
No, it wasn't meant to be said in that way.
Cheers, Nige. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Now, you were in a way, weren't you? You know, suddenly the wives and girlfriends of footballers became this big thing, and it's gone on being a big thing. But now it seems the sort of legal fights going on between them.
That's it, yeah. Wags at war, it is indeed. But when it first started, it was in Baden-Baden, Germany, and I was asked to go out and report for it for ITV. And let me tell you, I had never seen anything like it. It was like the Beatles had arrived. Everyone was screaming, paparazzi, going mad for these girls. And, you know, it was the press that called them wags.
Yeah,
we were all like, what's wags? You know, wives and girlfriends. And it just came a name. Some of them loved it, some of them loathed it. But and some made a living from it, like myself.
Well, I mean, look, you know, you've gone on to do just an extraordinary array of things. You know, you've done all sorts of TV, film, journalism, radio, telly. You're still writing, I think, for OK and all these magazines. You've got your book out, you know, Tales from the Red Carpet.
Indeed, Nige. You even get a mention, I think. You're in there somewhere.
There you are. But, I mean, what was it with you? I mean, you know, clearly, you know, the marriage went wrong, and that happens in life. But was it you sort of suddenly saw all these cameras and thought, I can do this?
Well, you know what? I actually went on to This Morning show with Jason, and he had testicular cancer. Yeah. And
which I'd had years ago too.
I didn't know that, Nigel. And I wanted to make a point that men were dreadful at going to the doctor, and you know, obviously, early detection is so important. And I did a chat with them, and then afterwards they said, "Look, you're so comfy on the sofa and easy to talk to. Would you do this other segment for us?" And then it went on from there. And before I knew it, I was out with the World Cup for ITV. I had my own show called Wags World, where I'd go in footballers' drawers and get the wives to tell me all the secrets. That went on for 8 years, and Richard Desmond asked me to do OK TV, which went on for another 9 years, and ITV at the movie. So really, it was a snowball effect. But sadly, marriage did split, and I kind of had to reinvent myself. I had to work. I wasn't, like some of these footballers' wages, which are sky high. I had a family to look after, 2 boys, and all I thought, well, look, I'll be myself and know what I know, and I love showbiz, love football.
It's all a long way, isn't it, from being raised by nuns at a Catholic school?
I know, if they could see me now. But these nuns, it's true, are a very strict Catholic school. I mean, if you saw a man in the building, a builder, we were all like, wow, there's a man here. But it was quite tough. But my father was in advertising, Saatchi and Saatchi.
Yeah.
And did lots of big brands. And so I made friends with the nuns, and we used to do sort of deals. So I could go to Top of the Pops and go to these events when I shouldn't really be going. And they let me off getting, coming in late.
Well, you've done, the stuff you... What's the most fun thing you've done in this sort of celeb media world?
What's the most fun? Well, I love the National Telly Awards. I love the Oscars. That was incredible. And very luckily met some amazing people, been able to interview people I only ever dreamed of as a kid. And it's it sounds glamorous. At times I'm waiting on the red carpet, posing like a teapot in the pouring rain and wind. But I have to say, Oscars was pretty cool. It was amazing. And I just think, it's usually the real high up named celebrities are the kindest. Those that are, not so, aren't so nice. But people like Tom Cruise, hilarious, will come and say, join us for dinner.
Yeah.
Really wonderful. And I've been very blessed, very lucky.
I mean, celeb world is, it shows no sign of going backwards. I mean, celebs become, in some ways, if you look at the younger generation, I think, I could be wrong, but I think social media has accelerated celeb stardom to such a level. I mean...
I think it's because they can be accessible. You used to be Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt, front cover of a magazine.
Yep.
That doesn't sell anymore. It's the celebs we see on the TV, the wags, they sell newspapers, they sell magazines, because I think... when you're little reading it or younger, you think, gosh, I've got a chance to be like that. When you see Hollywood signs, you think that's not obtainable.
But how do these celebs stay sane? Because they can't go to... I mean, I've had a bit of it in a way, but, you can't go to a restaurant, you can't go to a pub, and people have... I mean, I've had it. I've been sitting on an aeroplane. People walk up the aisle and go in front of you and it's very difficult to live any sort of normal life as a celeb, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think in some way, I think of it is that you are very blessed, in a blessed situation, and I get many benefits. My friend Bruno Tonioli, when we're out for dinner, you can't get a minute to talk to ourselves because people are coming over asking
but that's
about
horrible, isn't
Strictly.
it? But isn't that... I mean, it can be nice at times.
Yeah, it can have its down parts. I find sometimes the intrusion into your private life and people writing things that aren't true can be tough. But I think you've got to take the tough, the bad stuff with the good. And in a way, people say, well, you've sold your soul, you're on the Daily Mail online, or you're in... But, you do have feelings. I'm not a robot. But I find if you have a sense of humour, you can laugh it off. And I always laugh because I remember...
Yeah, I mean, you've had some tough times with the press, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. And, big divorce. I mean, only my mum knew that we were splitting. And before I knew it, there was a journalist on my doorstep saying, look, we're printing it either way. You tell me, or we're going to run it anyway. So that was tough. That was really tough when you've got 2 young kids and your private life. Haven't been the best at choosing men, Nigel, which doesn't do me any favours. But
I have read about it.
I know. We'll forget about that one. But it can be tough, that side of it. And you often think, are people with you because they want to get in the paper, or they're thinking they can get some sort of fame or lifestyle? That it's hard to trust.
Has Leveson changed this a little bit? Has Leveson... Yeah. Leveson has... I mean, I think before, what was happening with celebs, was that journalists would trespass on land, take a photograph of people in a private situation, run a swimming pool or whatever it was, and that was fair game to publish, and that isn't now. So is the balance a bit more reasonable?
It is, Nigel, and in Leveson, they can't just write willy-nilly anything, which it used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember picking up a certain newspaper thinking, where have they got this from? And it was totally made up, and other sources were getting paid huge amounts of money. And
well, the worst thing is when they write bad stories and they're true.
Well, we won't talk about those, I know. My poor mum, when she read some of the stories, it's like, it's true. But, Leveson has helped.
Yeah.
But and the press, I think, get a hard time at times. You know, we have, say, Meghan Markle usually whinging and moaning about the press, taking them to court. But we forget, when she first arrived on the scene, everyone welcomed her with open arms. The press was, you know, so good about her, more so than Kate. It was incredible when you look at the...
Oh, it was a real fairy tale start, wasn't it?
Indeed.
Yeah, no, and the longest honeymoon you've ever had. Now, you knew her going back a bit, didn't you?
I knew her when she was in a show called Suits.
Yeah.
We're going back. I mean, I didn't know who she was at the time. And I was at a charity event, and I think you may know him, John Caldwell's. Yeah. And he said, look, can you sit next to this girl? She's flown in from Canada. And I wanted to be with my mates. So I was like, no, I want to sit with my friends and have a giggle. He was like, no, look after her. But actually, we got on really, really well, and we did have a huge giggle, and she wanted to find an English boyfriend. So I said, look, I'll help you. So I was going through my phone. There was Ashley Cole, Chelsea footballer. I was trying. But, yeah, it was quite funny. But she did want to have an English boyfriend.
That was her plan all along?
Yeah, and she loved being here in London. So she wanted to work here. She actually wanted to be in Made in Chelsea, the show. I remember saying she loved the show.
Really?
But she was a real good, fun girl.
And how's she behaved since?
Well, Nigel, she ghosted me and Piers Morgan. She didn't... when she got with Prince Harry and it all, you know, happened... She did cut off a lot of people, which I understand, because I think celebrity is very different to royalty.
Of course.
But, no, you know, and I've been quite vocal in how I feel they've behaved.
Yeah. Well, you're never backwards and coming forwards, Lizzie, but, you know, away from all of the celeb and the stardusty stuff, there's actually quite a serious political side to you, isn't there? You're very into your politics.
I love my politics.
You really care. I know we've debated it before. You're passionate about things. But Boris Johnson, I think you're feeling a bit disappointed, aren't you?
I'm very disappointed in him, yeah. And I couldn't say goodbye to a very dear friend of mine that passed away through the pandemic. And then when I, you know, saw our Queen sitting on her own at her husband's funeral, and there he is partying on, it gets to me, and I can't forgive and forget it. And I know he'll hope it will go away and Sue Gray report, let's put it off with everything else. But I really don't think, for me and many others and thousands of families out there that can say goodbye to their loved ones, can forget it. And I'm sorry, if we haven't got a Prime Minister we can trust, that is, I mean, how can we go on?
But it was interesting. I don't know whether you saw earlier on, I had quite a well-known pollster on earlier. You know, 72% in one poll, 75% in another, think the Prime Minister is a liar. Now, you know, if we'd said that 20, 40 years ago, it would have been unthinkable that anybody could be in that position as PM. But interesting what Chris Curtis said. He said, the trouble is, he said, actually, the public think they're all liars, so Boris Johnson is not as disadvantaged by this. But you feel it is a matter of trust in
Well, it is a matter of trust. And if we can't trust our own Prime Minister, I mean, we're becoming the laughingstock of every... I don't believe anything now he says. And I know it's horrific what's happening in the Ukraine, and people are saying, oh, there are far more important things. Actually, you know what? This is still important and it's not going to go away. And I think he's hoping we can brush it under the carpet. But no, we can't.
Thoughts on Priti Patel's plan for Rwanda? Will it stop the cross-channel problem?
I don't know, Nigel. I heard you earlier. But it's very sad. It's just a whole sad situation. But I just don't like... I just think if you're going to take that crossing, you know you want to get here for a better life. And, you know, and... But sending them back, will it deter them? Will it stop them? I think it might. I think it might do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is my view. If they actually did send people to Rwanda, then why would you pay £2,500 to a criminal gang to get you across the channel?
But will it stop the criminal gangs? They'll still continue, will it? I mean...
Well, at the end of the day, it's all about those who are paying the traffickers. I mean, look, let's see where we go with it. It's very, very new. I mean, I'm giving her credit for at least trying something. You know, and it is an ongoing problem, and it is an issue. So what's going to happen post-Boris? Who is there post-Boris? Can you see the next leader?
Nigel, what happened to you? Come on, Nigel.
Not, but they won't have me in the Conservative Party, so it can't be me. I'm too much the outsider, you know.
Nigel, I think we've got to get some, I don't know, one of the backbenchers, Bernard Jenkins. I know you're laughing, but...
No, I'm not laughing.
We need someone that we can feel we can believe in again.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And Boris for me has become a bit of a buffoon.
Interesting.
Great showman. Look, he's like Trump on a budget. He's your friend. He is, isn't he? Great showman. For the shows he's great at, but.
Yeah, he's a cheerleader. He's a great cheerleader. I've always thought that, you know.
Have I got news for you? He's fantastic.
Yeah.
Not as our Prime Minister.
No,
and we
well,
have to have someone who we can trust.
I think a growing number of people think, Lizzie, that you're right on that. Now, look, you mentioned the Oscars earlier.
Yeah.
I just have to ask you about this trans issue, which seems to dominate so much public conversation these days, whether it's women's sport and it's Leah Thomas, the swimmer, whether it's the Oscars now not having Best Woman Actor and Best Female Actress. Are we losing our minds?
I think it's gone one step too far, and I think the woke brigade have come in and we can't. I think it's sad. I mean, look at Adele. She even said it when she won the award. You can't be celebrated as a female artist.
She said it with passion, didn't she?
And she said it with passion. And the music industry is a very male-orientated industry, as is the film business. And not to be celebrated as a woman, to strive and get through what you've got through, to be celebrated. And we are different. Let's be honest. It's genetics. We are different. And thank the Lord we are.
You can't say that.
No, but we are different in some ways. And I just think I know we have to move on in times, but it's sad we can't be celebrated. I think it's quite sad. And look, we've got the soap awards there. I heard that have scraps. Having any, best actress, best actor, it's all gone.
It's crackers.
And I just feel that some of the actresses and actors will lose out because of that.
Yeah.
That's my view.
No, there's no doubt. Lizzie Cundy, thank you for joining me on Talking Pints.
Lovely to see you, Nigel. Cheers.
Cheers.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christys, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Welcome back, everybody. Well, it's not the GB News Tavern in Paddington, but we're here in Westminster, and it is Talking Pints. And after a long day, my guest tonight, Tony Smith, I don't know how many interviews you've done today, Tony, but you could probably do with a drink, couldn't you?
I could indeed, Nigel.
Well,
thank you very much.
Welcome to Talking Pints.
Thank you very much for inviting
not
me.
one
I
little bit.
Could do with a drink, yes, indeed.
Now, this has been your whole career.
Yeah.
And it's still your career, and you're now, you're outside the Home Office after 40 years, but you're giving advice and strategic global advice and security advice and all of those things. So was it 1972?
Yeah.
You started off.
I did indeed, Nigel. I worked in the aliens branch.
Can you imagine that word being used today?
No, I can't actually. But I was a young lad. I went straight into the business from school. Didn't go to university. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Asked for the civil service and just ended up in the aliens branch, deciding whether or not aliens could stay or not. They were already in the country by then. I was doing extensions.
What defined an alien?
It was someone who wasn't a Commonwealth citizen, basically. So the aliens files were green and the Commonwealth files were yellow. And Commonwealth citizens, I mean, it wasn't very long before I started at Heathrow that Commonwealth citizens were being waved through the UK border, actually, Nigel. And we were just stopping aliens. And some of my early refusals were young European men who were coming here ostensibly as visitors, but really to try and get employment, to protect the labour market. Of course, fast forward 20 years and we're waving through Europeans and actually refusing entry to Commonwealth citizens. So, I mean, it's just gone.
It's gone.
It keeps going round and round, Nigel.
Circle. Yeah. No, it has. And you've documented all of this. You've got a book out.
I have got a book out, Nigel, and I did bring you a copy, and I did write in there for you because you've interviewed not just you, lots of journalists have interviewed, but I did say that, Nigel, for everything that you always wanted to know about immigration and borders, but were never afraid to ask.
Well, thank you very much indeed. I'll be having a good read of that. Changing borders, but it is interesting, isn't it? You talk about 1972, as you say. Obviously the situation with Europe changed fundamentally, but for the first 20 years we didn't notice, did we? Because for the first 20 years, some of us went to work in Europe, some Europeans came to work here. Wasn't really, was it, until the 1990s that we saw a lot of French people coming to London, and then of course it was in the noughties, wasn't it, when the former communist countries joined, that we saw that really, really big change.
Yeah, that was a very big changing point, actually, Nigel, when we did allow it's called, I think, the expansion or the accession of the A8.
A8 to begin with,
and then it was the A2 after that.
There was the A8, and then we had Bulgaria, Romania that joined a few years later.
And you know what? I mean, just shortly before that, I can remember we were still actually arresting people from A8 countries and deporting them here because they were working illegally, and someone just said, "Look, you better stop doing that." But as from tomorrow, actually, they're allowed to come freely. And don't worry, there'll only be a few thousand on the coaches at Victoria. It'll be about 8,000, someone said.
13,000. Blair's government said 13,000
right,
a year, and it was hundreds of thousands a year.
Yeah, I mean, we had that on the first day, I think.
Yeah, it was just completely out of control.
Yeah.
But just take you back again. So how did we used to do this? Because today the big subject, I mean, we could talk about legal immigration, and we could talk about the fact the population's risen by 8 million this century, etc. Yeah. But it's illegal immigration that the Prime Minister is talking about today, and Priti Patel's out in Rwanda. How did you, as a young officer engaged in this business, how did you deal with people coming to Britain illegally?
So I cut my teeth on the Immigration Act of 1971, which came into force on 1/1/73.
Yeah.
Just around the time I was joining, but that was probably the most draconian looking back piece of legislation. It gave me huge powers, Nigel. I mean, some powers that I wasn't aware were so huge. But actually, as an immigration officer, I was empowered to decide whether or not you entered the country. So when you came to my desk at the airport, if I checked your passport, I was trained to look out for forgeries and dodgy passports and things. And if you had a dodgy passport, well, then I would send you straight back on the first plane you arrived on by serving you with a notice and serving the airline with a notice, and then we would keep you at the airport and you'd go straight, same with the ferry ports really. And then when we got into illegal entry, the same thing applied. If we found people that were coming up the beaches illegally, then they were liable to detention.
And did that sort of thing happen in those days?
Yes. In fact, there was an amnesty, I remember, back in the 70s for illegal entrance, and quite a lot of overstayers tried to pretend they'd entered illegally to get into the amnesty. So I remember all that quite well. There were illegal entrants, but the powers we had were probably, when you think about that now, draconian. But yes, I didn't...
And that's vested in you, and they had no right to call a lawyer or anything like that?
No, it was upon the authority of my chief. So if I wanted to refuse anybody, I had to get a second pair of eyes, which was my chief, who would second guess my decision. And if they had an entry clearance or a work permit, they got a right of appeal before removal. But generally, that's what I cut my teeth on for the first 20 years or so. What happened after that was this sort of huge asylum intake that we got. It started in the 90s, and I was here actually in the noughties, 2002. We had 100,000, Nigel, arrived and it was a lot worse than now because they were actually camping on the beaches in Dover. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Huge investment. We had to triple the Home Office budget. In fact, I was on an attachment to Canada and came back and we tripled the budget. I mean, I couldn't come back at the same time. Tony, all the people that used to work for you have all been promoted. I mean, we've had this massive asylum directorate created, and we didn't have any computers, Nigel. This was all paper. So there was a paper interview, which we'd write down, keep at the port, a pink file, and then there was another green one in the Home Office, and the paperwork just mounted up and up. We have got an iron mountain of files down in Hayes where all these files were kept. But actually, we simply sunk under, and so I still think we've never really recovered in the Home Office from the backlogs that grew because became
the not fit for purpose Home Office.
Oh, John Reid came in and he said that we weren't fit for purpose. I remember that very, very well. And we were all put on leadership training courses, and we all went through additional, re-evaluation of ourselves. But the fundamental issue was what we'd created was this huge bureaucracy around asylum, a huge legal profession which continues to grow around asylum. So the decision making now is not at the border.
Did the Human Rights Act coming in the late 1990s, did it make a big difference in those days?
Yes, certainly, because now you weren't just talking about asylum, you were talking about a claim to human rights, and particularly Article 3 or Article 8. Now, you couldn't do these things like I used to while the passenger was in front of you, or the illegal entry on the beach. You couldn't do that there and then, because there were lots of things to consider. You had to interview the person, you had to get second check, so it was a longer process. You couldn't hold people, Nigel, for all of that time. You granted temporary admission. So they'd be given a piece of paper, so that you go and live, if you knew someone here, you go and live with them. If you don't know somebody here, well, we'll find somewhere. That's when the asylum accommodation boom began, and still goes. I mean, we heard today about 5 million, was it, in hotels now?
A day.
So so that's what happened. So people are now in the community. They haven't really got status. They don't know what's going to happen to themselves, and the Home Office is struggling to keep up. And even when they do get to, I remember doing a presentation to Jack Straw's special advisor, and I drew a race course about, if you really want to achieve removals, you've got to get over these hurdles of refusal, appeal, judicial review, documentation, whatever, and then even when you don't get to the winning post because you can go round again because something happens, a relationship develops or something else. So it's a perennial cycle of casework that has been the problem, and successive governments have tried to bring in things like the new asylum model or frivolous and vexatious claims, third country removals, lots and lots of things done by governments of all colours, Nigel. I'm going back right the way back to, when we had the Blair government. Actually, we had tip in the balance. Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah. I do. How do you, Tony, for people at home, how would you as a professional in this industry, how do you define a genuine refugee as opposed to somebody who's an economic migrant? Because that really is the crux, isn't it, of much of this debate?
Yeah, and it's really hard because you haven't got very good evidence to go on other than what they tell you when they arrive. You haven't got third-party evidence. You certainly don't have any documentary evidence. If there are no records of this person, how do you know actually whether or not? So you say, well, this is where this is the account that you have given. You've then got researchers in the Home Office will look at the country you say you came from. Were you really involved in that thing that happened at that time or not? So it's a very, very difficult process. But I do think it's right to distinguish people, Nigel, who have been out of their homeland for a long, long time, for some time now, that have been living in a safe third country. And I think that's what they're trying to do now. We went over with the BBC Kent crew to Calais just before Christmas, and we interviewed a chap who feared persecution in Iran, but he left Iran 15 years ago. He'd been around Europe, he's applied for visas for everywhere, and he told his friends, look, come to Calais, the way in there is to get a boat. Yeah. He got a text from his friend in Cambridge who was working in a kebab shop, and he honestly thought, this is, if I can't get a visa, this is what I need to do. So it's an education process. But actually, there are options for you. He did get asylum status eventually in France, I think long residence concession in France, we've been there so long. But there are options for you to stay where you are. You don't all have to come to the UK.
Thanks for joining me on Talking Pints.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Nigel. Pleasure to talk to you.
And thanks for the work you've done for the country.
Thank you very much.
Let's have a look at tonight's guest, Lisa Mason, Olympic gymnast, gold medalist at the Commonwealth Games. And here she is in action in the 2015 British Gymnastics Championships. Well, welcome, Lisa Mason, to Talking Pints. I have to say, I sort of feel quite dizzy looking at that.
I still get nervous and butterflies when I watch myself compete, and it's really weird.
You, sport, it's in the news in a big, big way now. We're used, of course, aren't we, to, in the Olympics, in gymnastics, in all sorts of athletic events, we are used to endless doping scandals with the Russians, not to mention cycling. I mean, sport does have all these problems. But is it really? I mean, I don't know how you feel about this, but clearly Russia and Belarus have got some seriously good men and women tennis players, you know, up there competing to win. Is it right to ban them as individuals? What do you think?
Personally, I don't think it is. I think that the decisions that are being made by the Russian government are decisions being made by the Russian government to discipline, I guess you would word it as, discipline these athletes for something that they're not doing, that they have openly disagreed with publicly. I don't think it's right. I'm sure there could be a loophole somewhere where, you know, they could compete unattached, if you will, not put the Russian flag there.
But it's not going to happen, is it? Because Wimbledon have made this decision. You know, the French Open haven't taken that decision.
Yeah.
I worry what precedent it may set. I mean, I really, really do. But sport, as I say, sport is always surrounded by controversy. It's really interesting. I've always sort of thought that young people getting involved in sport is a great thing. Not just it gets them off the streets, but it teaches them discipline. It teaches them they've got to get up in the morning and do things. And with you, gymnastics started very, very early, didn't it, in life?
It did. I started at 5. So, yeah, I was caught climbing on my house roof with my 3 brothers. So my mother needed to channel my energy somehow and put us all into gymnastics classes.
But you, from the age of 5, and as you're going through those developmental years, you weren't just doing gymnastics for fun, were you? You were doing gymnastics seriously, training.
Yeah, I think I got to the age of around 10, 11, and it was quite adamant that I had a talent. And within gymnastics, you know, especially back then, it was very much, you can only be a gymnast from a certain age. You know, once you're an adult, you can't be a gymnast because of the whole Nadia Comaneci thing and everyone looking at that and thinking, that's how you do it. And back in the day, that was how you did it. So it was very much, okay, so if you're going to do this and you're going to, you know, go for the Olympics and, you know, you need to come out of school and you need to live with your coaches and you need to train 6 days a week, 8 hours a day and, you know, not have a childhood and not see your friends. And
so how much pressure were you put under?
The thing is hard. I was a kid, so I wouldn't really look at it as pressure so much. I think I was very conscious of the fact that I realised how much my family had sacrificed and were sacrificing, not just my mum and my dad, but my brothers also. You know, there were things that they wanted to do, and a lot of the time they couldn't do it because I had a gymnastics competition, for instance. So I think there was this conscious thought in the back of my head, like, you can't just quit, you know, because everyone's relying on you now.
Is it good to put kids under that much? Is it good to put 10-year-old kids under that level of pressure and expectation?
I think this is where I've always kind of had the disagreement with, especially in diving and gymnastics, more so because they're the only sports that allow 15-year-olds to compete at the Olympic Games. And I do think it's too much pressure. And there's a big difference between, you know, training a child and putting fear in them to do something because they're not old enough to understand it. So you're putting pressure on them to do something you know that they can do. But ultimately, when you're an adult, you understand it. You understand that you've got to put in the work in order to get a result. And I don't think it's fair you're putting all this pressure on these children.
You know, they put you as a kid on prescription drugs.
Yes, ultimately, yeah. Yeah. I mean, you don't question it because it's very much like, OK, well, this hurts, OK, we'll go see the team doctor and they will just give you a nice little bright yellow pills.
And as long as those pills don't break the rules...
Yeah. This is it.
These are quite troubling questions, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, my first time round, it was very different. Things were very different back then. Unfortunately, especially with the whole Gymnastics Alliance, you know, it was very real that the fact that these kind of predators and this abuse did and was very much still, and it still is around in gymnastics and
other sports too.
Absolutely, other sports as well. So it's very difficult because this all coming out and, you know, exposing a lot, and a lot of it is about re-educating people. And I do believe that people can change. And like I said, when you're brought up in an environment where you're taught that this is the only way to do it, if it's not broke, don't fix it, you have to re-educate people to say, well, actually, you know, maybe screaming at them and sitting on a 10-year-old to push them down into spits is not the best idea.
No, there are questions. However, with you, it kind of worked because you went on, you got to where you wanted to get to. You took part in the Olympics, you took part Commonwealth Games, World Championships. I guess, was the highlight the Commonwealth Games?
Do you know what? Yeah, Commonwealth Games was so much more fun than the Olympics. I think because, obviously, the Olympics is so many more countries and you've got, like, the likes of America and China and things like that. Commonwealth Games is a little bit more relaxed and I actually went in there and I won my gold medal on an event that I really wasn't supposed to win on. I messed up on the event I could have quite easily walked and won that. But, yeah, so it was nice because I was so shocked I didn't even think that I'd make the final.
Thank you, Lisa, for joining me on
Thank
Talking
you.
Pints. Thank you
Cheers.
very much indeed. Cheers.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Sharon Gaffka, civil servant, Love Island star, and now a campaigner. Let's see a little bit more of her on Love Island.
I'm Sharon, I'm 25 years old, I'm a civil servant and I'm from Oxford. So at the moment I work as an operations lead for the Department of Transport and working on EU exit policy. In my past life, outside of work, I was a beauty queen, I was Miss International UK in 2018. fact that I do beauty pageants and I like to wear makeup and wear nice clothes to work and I'm quite colourful. I think it puts a stereotype in people's minds that I'm probably not all that intelligent and I don't really know what I'm doing. I find in my relationships that my assertiveness and my strong sense of self can probably get in the way sometimes. Maybe some guys feel a bit emasculated by me. The right guy, the confident man, would be able to accept that and take that in his stride.
Well, welcome, Sharon Gaffka, to Talking Pints.
Thank you.
Welcome to the programme. And I have to say, you're the first person that I've had on this programme to opt for a pint of white wine. We don't normally criticise our guest drinks, but what's the reason behind that?
So this is a running joke between some of my ex-colleagues and I. On the original date of Brexit, I thought it'd be really nice to get my team to the pub because it's been a stressful few months. Because there was protests going on. They had no wine glasses. It was plastic cups. So I've been drinking wine out of a pint glass. And I thought I was big, keeping up with all the boys, but obviously wine is significantly stronger than beer,
yes.
and the night went downhill very quickly. So, yeah, this is the running joke.
And Department for exiting the EU, and without wishing for you to betray your former colleagues, it seemed to me that almost every civil servant I met believed in Remain, and they were vehemently opposed to Brexit. Am I right to think that?
I mean, you are to ask me that. I'm very much a Remainer. And I know that's something we disagree on, but yeah, so I'm very much pro-European.
Still?
Still very much
So you're a rejoiner?
Yeah, I'm 100% down as a rejoiner.
Yeah, well, no wonder you're in the civil service. and what about them? And what about some of these civil service departments? Only 25% of the Department for Education back in Whitehall. That can't be right, can it?
Are you asking about post-COVID?
Well, I'm just saying, yeah. I mean, most people are back in offices, and the civil service seem very reluctant.
I mean, I can't speak, obviously, now because I'm not in it, but I don't think there's a reluctance. I think maybe because, I mean, I don't know. I honestly can't give you an answer to that.
No, I mean, I'm just shocked by it. But look, the thing is, you were doing that job, Department for exiting the EU, as a Remainer, under a Remainer Prime Minister. I mean, no wonder it all went wrong and took so long. But how did Love Island come along, the opportunity?
Love Island actually started off as a bit of a running joke between my friends and I. Working in Westminster, I was living my best life, and all my friends had settled down. So we just thought, it'd be a bit of a running joke to get me on there. I'd be very different to any other contestant that's been on there before. And the joke kind of got a bit too far. And, I got a phone call saying 3 weeks later, you're flying to Mallorca and you're going to go into the opening lineup of the show.
And the show is a sensational success. I mean, the numbers that watch it, the number, I know the number of young girls that watch it, and just desperately, their dream would be to be on Love Island. What was it like as an experience?
I mean, I find it strange that it's people's dreams to be on that show. Because for me, it wasn't my dream.
No.
It was a running joke between my friends and I. And I think it was what I expected it to be. There's a lot of direction from producers and things like that. But it's a group of good-looking people in a villa all summer. So I mean, what is there to expect? To be honest,
Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it. I think I missed out on girls' holidays when I left sixth form because my mum was ill and I went to Westminster and went to work straight away. So I felt like I missed out on that experience. So for me, it was like reliving 18-year-old Sharon a couple of years down the line.
And did you prove that intelligent people too go on Love Island?
I mean, a lot of intelligent people have been on Love Island.
All right.
Maybe I'm just a bit more. I think some of the intelligent women that have been on there before are a bit more softly spoken than I am, and probably not as opinionated as I am. So that's probably where I'm a little bit different.
Yeah, and I mean, people who've been on Love Island, they tend to get involved in all sorts of celeb-y type things afterwards. Some of them very successfully, some of them not. But you've kind of got involved with campaigning in many ways. Now, I mean, anyone in the modern world that puts their head over the parapet, whether it's doing Love Island, being in politics, whatever it is, can expect on social media a certain level of abuse. I think it's impossible to think that you're not going to get some level of abuse. But just explain what happened to you.
I mean, the producers do very well in kind of telling you, setting your expectations that there will be some level of trolling. And I think that's why they put a lot of psychological, I wouldn't say lack of better word, tests to check that you're you're going to be able to handle it because of how big the show is. For me, I experienced a lot of racial abuse. Things that were aired on the show that were outside of my control. I received a lot of abuse for that, and a lot of death threats. I think that's one thing that I didn't necessarily expect from the show.
And what was the means of this? Were these through tweets or Facebook posts, or how was it done?
So, I mean, I don't really use Facebook, but I did see some Facebook posts about me about previous jobs that I've had when I was younger. Most of it came through Instagram DMs. A lot of it, I think 95% of it came through Instagram DMs. Yeah.
And how did it affect you?
You have your ups and downs. I think now, if I was to get a similar kind of message, I would just brush it off because I think I'm so numb and used to it. But I think at the time, especially with COVID going on, with travel restrictions and rules, I had to sit in quarantine for 5 days. I live on my own. So when you spend 5 days in complete solidarity, all you have is to look at your phone.
And you're reading this stuff.
Yeah, and I'm reading every single message, everybody's opinions about me. And I think that's what was really, really hard. And then, it's not just with people that aren't in the public eye, it's just a message. But then you have press and media on top adding to it. I think I got one comment on a photo calling me a catfish, and all of a sudden it was big, widespread on the Sun website that I was a catfish in terms of my photos. So, it's not just people, it's also the added pressure of media as well.
Now, Nadine Dorries is talking and pushing very hard for this, online harms bill. And it's very tough, isn't it, to know where do you draw the limits on this stuff? Because, free speech is obviously very, very important. A little bit of abuse is probably acceptable in the real world because it is the real world and people aren't perfect. It's very hard to legislate, isn't it, for this? And very hard. These social media companies that we're talking about here, the names that we've mentioned so far, and there are others, TikTok, I know you're very active on that as well. These are just the most enormous companies. There are billions of people using these platforms. What should government do? Where do you see the line, Sharon, on this, in terms of what the law should do?
I expected you to be an avid argument of the free speech side.
No, I am, but I absolutely am. And I do generally take the view sticks and stones may break my bones, and I think we have to learn to live with a bit of abuse, but I also accept that persistent, large-scale, frankly, bullying of people online is going to do them a lot of harm. So I get that,
Yeah, with all due respect, Nigel, I very much work with young women's charities. My focus is on protection of young people and young women, especially on the internet. There is a very fine line between criticism and abuse. I'm open to people criticising my actions and things like that. When you send me death threats, I've received voice notes from teenage boys telling me they're going to kill me. That's very much no freedom of speech whatsoever. And also, one thing that I really do care about this online safety bill is that cyber flashing is now made illegal. As part of the bill, I receive probably on average 2 unsolicited photos a day. That's not freedom of speech to anyone.
No, sure.
And, if somebody walking down the street took their trousers off, they'd be arrested. But why is it OK to do that to me on social media? And, the sanctions that I think the Online Safety Harms Bill put in place is that it puts financial sanctions onto big corporations that don't follow their own guidelines. If I report something to Instagram, to TikTok, does it really get picked up? Not really.
I don't know. They're so big,
it doesn't.
Firms.
It's a plaster put on a big wound, to be honest, and that's how I see it. My season of Love Island was part of the Instagram trial where words were filtered. Words weren't really filtered, not in my experience anyway, otherwise I wouldn't see half the stuff I saw.
No, listen, you obviously care very much about it, and I understand it. No, I get it. There are limits to free speech, of course there are, and incitement, violence, all of those things are beyond the pale. And the other campaign, Sharon, that you got yourself involved in, which is just beyond my comprehension and thinking, is this whole business of the spiking of girls' drinks. But then that's gone even a stage further now, too. And I've read about reports of nightclubs of people actually being jabbed with syringes. What the hell's going on?
Yeah, I think that's why, my campaign is so important, because a lot of people that I've met and spoken to that have been running campaigns on this for almost 20 years have mainly focused on stopping drink spiking, putting drink covers on drinks and things, and I think it's actually not tackling the problem, it's just skirting around the bush. And that's why we're seeing increasing numbers of injectable spiking. So
it's just beyond comprehension.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, one of the things that's why I'm so passionate about online safety is because I talk about very passionately about spiking, about police prevention in spiking and things like that on social media. And I get a lot of young men commenting back saying, I don't know how to take a joke. I have no sense of humour. I'm sorry, but this is not funny.
Really?
Yeah, all of the time. And I think one of the things I went to David Hudson about was the lack of education on drugs and, consent in terms of sex education. 10 years ago, I was sat in a classroom learning about this, and I'm getting inundated with messages from boys and girls 10 years later, and they're still not having it. It's constantly in the news about drugs, about sex. Like, why are we not educating? These beliefs are taught and learned and not things.
Is this sick behaviour a product of the internet?
It could be. I think that there is a part to play in like what porn is available and things like that. And I think it's very much targeted towards violent intercourse towards women. And I think that that's where people start to see these things and like learn these traits about.
But I mean, to spike a drink or to inject somebody, I mean, this is to remove their ability to consent, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's not just about sex. It's also about, I've had 1,500 testimonies when I put out a request on social media because I wanted to write a formal piece of evidence to the Home Affairs Committee. It was a variety of different reasons, 14 to 65, male and female, not just for sex or for assault or theft. It was, their friends putting a drug in their drinks. They thought it was funny. And I think that, for me as well, I really want a solid piece of legislation that covers that because these victims aren't protected. When you go to a hospital, if I put something in your drinks, I think it's a joke. You're not protected in the eyes of the law, really, are you? And so that's why I think it needs to be really more proactive and we really need to tackle at the early ages as opposed to starting when it's too late.
You've clearly got the campaigning bit very firmly between your teeth. You're very passionate about it. So what next for Sharon Gaffka? Is it politics? Is it heading up big campaigns? It's not going back to the civil service, clearly.
I would really much love to see myself as a Member of Parliament one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely see that as where my career is going or some kind of investigative journalism. But yeah, I think definitely not standard influencer or things that you see from Love Islanders.
Well, I can tell you what, Sharon, I think you've got every chance of becoming an MP. I can spot them a mile off. No, but I can. I can see bright young people who are going to do that if that's what they want to do. You'll find that it's a job you could earn a lot more money in the private sector, but that's not why you go into it. The right reason to go into it is because you actually want to change things. It's not because you want rank and position and title. It's because you actually want to change things and you have passions. And you'll get even more online hatred and abuse, probably as a Member of Parliament. But I think it's great. I think the way you've used that bit of celebrity in Love Island and you've used that to get out there and campaign for things that you care about and things that really matter. And I have to say, I think it is actually pretty horrific and pretty sick what some, not all, but what some young women are being put through. So I want to thank you for joining me on Talking Pints and commend you and wish you luck with your campaign.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you. Very good.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking fine and clear in the north, with showers in the southwest clearing away. Let's take a look at the details. Showers will have cleared much of the southwest by 7 p.m, but still a few lingering around coastal parts of Cornwall. Further showery rain is expected later in the night. In London, it will be largely cloudy to end the day, but it should stay largely dry. South coastal parts will see some showers overnight. Any lingering showers